Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be going through some of the things that I've been working on in the past few days. I've been working on this little story that I was creating in 2024. However, I stopped writing it, and after talking to a friend who's been helping me through my journey of learning Blender, he inspired me to keep working on it. So I picked it back up, revised it, and I'm actually rewriting it currently. Today we're just going to be going over what I've been working on a little bit in 3D space. To kick things off, I started roughly outlining a simple version of Nebetta's hut. Nothing too detailed yet, just something to get a sense of where her space would sit in the world. After that, I started placing down some trees using this billboard technique I learned. Basically, it's a way to keep performance light using flat planes that always face the camera instead of full 3D trees. They used to do it a lot in old games. However, I'm probably going to go and actually make base meshes for at least the bark of the tree, and then go back and add JPEG PNGs of leaves as the top part, or make my own in the future, but we'll get there. And if you look closely, you'll see my main character Rowan's crash ship in the background. It's not textured yet, but I dropped it in early just to help line up the terrain with the story. Next, I started texturing Nebetta's hut using a simple wood log pattern I made in Photoshop. I was learning about, the rules of twos and stuff like that, so I started with the 128 by 128 JPEG size. It wasn't anything fancy, but it was enough to get the job done for the classic cabin feel. I applied the texture across the main walls, roof, and the windows. It's mostly a placeholder setup for now, but it already gives the hut a lot more identity. Framing out the area, I started adding simple planes around the edges of the landscape layout. The technique inspired by old PS1 games, using flat geometry as a background walls just to keep the space feeling enclosed. I just followed the shape of the terrain, placing them along the curves to keep everything feeling a bit natural but low poly. After that, I brought in the scaled cube to make sure everything was properly sized to a human character. It's a quick way and a good way to lock in proportions without needing a full rig yet. Here's a quick overview of the layout so far with the PS1 walls fully wrapped around the area. It's starting to really feel like a defined space now. Next, I went back and tweaked Nebetta's hut a little bit more. It was mostly stretching out the roof shape to make it feel a little bit more natural and lived in. After that, I brought in a forest JPEG that I found online, and I scaled it down to 128 by 128 like the other textures. And it's just a placeholder for now, but I actually like how it looks. It just holds up what I'm looking for in this forest environment right now. Right after applying the forest textures to the wall, I ran into this kind of annoying problem. The whole image was stretched across the planes, which obviously made it look awful. I didn't really quite know how to fix the UVs in a way that kept everything lined up and unstretched as a whole, so I ended up rotating and adjusting each wall section manually. I applied it to the background planes I placed earlier, and it created this nice illusion of dense forest surrounding the level. Cheap trick, but it's effective. It took me a bit longer, but eventually I got everything the way I wanted it to look, and now it wraps around the whole entire level without any weird distortion. Here's a closer look at the updated scene. The shader for the billboard trees is active now, and the Nebetta's hut feels like it's actually tucked into a forested area. Now for this part, I wanted to give my ground some basic colors. It's nothing special, but it's just a flat green just to break up a little bit of the gray from everything else in the area. After cycling through a few shades, I landed on a tone that felt closer to what I wanted to the environment, more muted with a slight worn out look. At this point, I also fixed the tree billboards. Or they had this black background issue going on, but I swapped them over to the PNGs, the alpha transparency on, so they could blend in cleanly into the scene. To finish things off, I added a color ramp mixed with a little bit of other nodes just to get this kind of orange and green look on the ground, so I started looking like grass fading into dry soil. It's subtle, but I think it adds a lot to the scene. I actually really like this look, but I ended up changing it later on, as you can see, but I might end up going back to it just to keep a little bit of the vibe that I'm going for. Next, I started playing around with the lighting in the area just to test out different positions of the sun and seeing how the shadows hit the terrain. I used a sheet of sky texture for the background and cycled through a few looks, from deep blue to more of a late afternoon feel. Although in the actual story, it'll probably be nighttime, so I didn't want to work in a dark environment, so I just kept the lighting like this for now. Once the lighting was set, I started sculpting the ground out to add some hills and depth, making it feel more natural and less flat. I tried to make my original textures work with the new shapes, experimenting with different patterns and color blends, like creating new pathways and variations across the grass and dirt. But honestly, it kind of got a little bit tricky, and to be honest, painting out the detailed pathways might be a little bit difficult for me right now, but trust me, I'll get back to it in the future. After a lot of trial and error, I decided to switch back to this simple grass texture I found online as a placeholder, something that holds up better while I figure out the next steps. But anyways though, here's the full layout of where I'm at with Nebetta's hut so far. It's coming along together nicely, and I'm happy with how the environment's starting to shape out, even though it's just a rough demo. It'll help in terms whenever I'm uploading everything into Unreal Engine and I'm starting to mess with game mechanics and stuff like that. So it's a good placeholder for now. But I'm going to wrap up everything in this stage, making sure everything feels right before moving on to other parts of the project. Next up in the next devlog, I'll probably be shifting focus to the main character Rowan, showing off his untextured version of his model, starting to shape out his hair a little bit. It'll be fun to get into the character work after all this environment building. After all, it's been a while since I've even showed any character modeling, so I'm excited to get into that for once. I'm like 6 chapters in, so everything's going pretty well. Once I finish this 6th chapter, I'm gonna start working on just getting everything up to chapter 6 made, at least in game form. So it should be somewhat of a journey. Hope you guys stick around for it. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you later. Have a good one.